Good morning, my friends. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Christmas meditation. So let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Master Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, dear friend Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow to you all. Guide us with your loving presence. Awaken us within, that wherever we look in this world, we see your loving hand, that every thought we think, every action we take is guided by your inspiring presence. We are your children. Bring us home. Om, peace. Amen. Today is about the 16th, I think, of December, 2021, and I'm going to interrupt my cycle of talking about supportive leadership and what I've been doing, and probably for the next few days just focus on Christmas, because why not? It's so much more wonderful than anything else we can do. And I was asked a question yesterday that made me think that there was just something worth sharing here. When Paramahansa Yogananda came to America in 1920, and he set up his headquarters in Los Angeles in 1925, somewhere in all that period of time, he began to establish a way of celebrating Christmas in America. Jesus is one of the gurus, one of the 5 gurus of the line of teaching that Yogananda brought. And he didn't just put Jesus on the altar as a tribute to being in a Western country. It was and is a deep connection between Master and all of the gurus of our line and us. So since Christmas is really the main festival in the Western calendar, Master put appropriate energy into celebrating that holiday, not merely to sort of be Western, but to awaken people to the deeper inner reality that our relationship with Christ can represent. And Master understood that there were 2 aspects to this holiday. One of them was the social fact of it. Religious festivals have a very positive effect on human relationships. They bring everybody back to the core importance of loving each other. Human love, perfectly expressed, is almost the same as divine love. So in Master's path, unlike some, there are spiritual paths that simply repudiate everything about this world. But Master's way was to integrate spirituality into everything we were doing. So he had great respect for the social customs of the world, of life, of family, of friendship. So he felt the social aspects of Christmas in an uplifted spiritual way. He had some very strong things to say about wasting Christmas on worldliness. But the elevated kind of refined love he very much endorsed. But he wanted to ground it in something far more, something deeper and more true, so that our human love would be an expression of divine love. So the pattern that he developed was an all-day meditation, which was really 8 hours, an 8-hour meditation. That was spiritual Christmas was an 8-hour meditation. Social Christmas was a party in one way or another. And then Christmas Day had its own character. So it was essentially a 3-day celebration. Swami said originally Master had the 8-hour meditation on the 23rd, but then people had to stay up all night cooking for the he did it on the 24th, but then people had to cook all night in order to have things ready for the 25th. So, okay. Originally, Master had the social Christmas on the 24th and spiritual Christmas on the 24th, and then social Christmas on the 25th. But then people had to stay up all night cooking, Swamiji said, so they persuaded him to have the meditation on the 23rd. And then the social Christmas was actually almost 2 days. The whole pattern has shifted over time. So when in 1971, actually, when I was there and I was in charge of the kitchen, and Swamiji really instituted in a formal way the same 3-day celebration at Ananda Village, which has sort of been ever since. Of course, when those of us, we started forming other colonies. When we lived at Ananda Village, we were, especially then, we were a totally self-contained world. We could declare any holidays we wanted. We all worked within the community, and so our time was completely our own. Our world was so much our own that when the mail would be delivered on January 5th, which was Master's birthday, or March 7th, which was Master's Mahasamadhi Day, or May 19th, Swami's birthday, I was always surprised that the mail would be delivered, because it felt to me that the whole world had stopped and was celebrating these great holidays, so why would the postman still be working? And I sort of I doubt if I'll see it in my lifetime, but I believe someday the mail will not be delivered on January 5th. But the tradition that Swami introduced us to back then was 8 hours of meditation. And perhaps there were some among us who could look with equanimity upon 8 hours of meditating, but there were a lot of us who couldn't. It was a very challenging concept, at least it seemed to be. And yesterday, my friend Bhavani, who does the technical work for me mostly, suggested that I talk about the way she asked the question. This is how I heard it, how the 8-hour meditation has changed for me over the years, and so on like that. And my reaction to it was this: the spiritual path, the development on the spiritual path is not linear. And one of the difficulties that I see people get themselves into is that they think that the spiritual path is linear, that today it's 70% difficult, tomorrow it's going to be 65% difficult, then it's going to be 60% difficult, and then when I finally get the percentage down, that from then on, this is what's going to happen. And when it doesn't happen like that, because it doesn't happen like that, then people begin to think that they're doing something wrong. That somehow my growth is measured in these exact ways that I can easily see. You know, all of we're incredibly data-oriented in our culture, especially in the West. More information, more facts, more statistics. Swami made the remark once that there's really no such thing as statistics. You can get the averages, you can get the numbers of who did what to whom, on, you know, and how many there were and how many there weren't. He said, but every individual's life is guided not by statistical probability that it needs to be 9 out of 10 and you're the 9th. It's guided by your personal karma. And so whatever happens to you is just your destiny, has no relationship to anything else except that it was exactly right for you. Then your destiny may collectively make a statistic, but it's not the statistic that caused your destiny. So when I started thinking about the 8-hour meditations, because not all of you by any means, but many of you will be part of them, because once we started in the urban centers, we had to have them at convenient times because we weren't our own culture. So we always have had them at the Saturday closest to Christmas, which of course shifts around as to how close it is to Christmas Day. But I rather like it when there's a whole week, because that whole, that period of time where we all try to go deep together into the Spirit just lays this foundation under everything else that happens, because that effort has been made. And also, you know, social and spiritual Christmas are not that different in the sense that we've all made that spiritual effort together. And I encourage any of you who are able, because of online, I believe almost every Ananda group is broadcasting their all-day meditation online. And last year when it was completely online, this year we're having in-person also, it was surprisingly effective. And so you can meditate with India, meditate with the Italian group, you can meditate with any of the American groups. Just do a little bit of effort on the internet and you'll find it. Well, coming back to the question that I was asked, to sort of how does it evolve? And actually, and the linear definition of spiritual life, I was really trying to understand how to explain it. When I was writing the book Light Bearer, which was a progression from when I first met Swami to his passing, 45 years, the obvious way to write that book would also have been as a memoir, as my own personal development. But it was like I could never pick up the book that way, or how my relationship with Swamiji developed, because it never developed. It was, I saw him, I felt his consciousness, I knew who he was. Now, of course, I developed, but it didn't develop. It was just there. And all of spiritual life is smriti, which is divine memory, that I just need to not forget. You don't have to create anything, you don't have to develop anything. You have to just stop forgetting. And yes, you can spin that out into all kinds of other sort of rational, linear ways of saying it. But I personally have found almost none of them helpful. That the more my spiritual life is just about where I am in this moment and whether or not I remember. I remember that I am surrounded by angelic spiritual forces, and there is an infinitely loving divine spirit that is emanating infinite love to me all the time. And I have friends in high places who are cheering me on, literally, just like, you know, how a little kid has its parents, and you're running the 100-yard dash, and your parents are near the finish line, and they're screaming your name just so that you can make it across, and everything about them is there just helping you do what you can do, and how powerful that is inside of us, unless we forget. And then all of a sudden, we feel weak, and we feel abandoned, and we feel vulnerable. There's an affirmation for security, and that Swami wrote, and I don't remember all the words, but I heard it just the other day, and it was very clear to me. I stand in the fortress of thy infinite love, and nothing and no one can break in and harm me. Now, that doesn't mean that no challenges will ever come. It just means that nothing and no one can separate me from that divine love. And if nothing can separate me from that divine love, what harm could ever come to me? And so I suppose you could talk about development toward that understanding, but we have to have had at least a glimpse of it. It's more like it's clouds. It's like these clouds, and they sometimes the wind blows and they're totally cleared, and then it mists over again. I was looking at the alignment of planets up in the sky 2 nights ago. Saturn and Jupiter and Venus are all in this line, and you could stand there and literally see it. And then there was this misty stuff that would kind of obscure them. They weren't gone. Absolutely nothing had changed. They were rock solid right where they were, but this mist was moving all around, which was my brain. It was physical, but that's my brain. That's the spiritual life. The pole star is there. You let the mist come in. And so spiritual life is the process of remembering. And so let me come back to just simply to an 8-hour meditation. And when Swamiji was living, when he was living in his body, he's still living, but when he was present in his body, and therefore would come through the front door of my house and sit in my living room in the chair, which is just off camera, but he would sit in the chair that's just a few feet away from me. Whenever he would come out into the living room, because he had his own room in this house, he would sometimes just come out, bring a book out, just sit in the living room, ask for a cup of tea. Whenever he was in the house at all, and whenever he was in the living room, we'd all just kind of gravitate into the living room. And if he didn't want to talk, we'd just quietly sit there and read a book. Because just to be anywhere where he was, my experience of being with Swamiji is what I experienced from knowing him was what contentment feels like. Because wherever Swami was, if it was Dharma for me, because from the year 1987 on, I never lived in the same community that Swami lived in, so my time with him was intermittent. It was frequent, but it was intermittent. So much of my life, my duty kept me somewhere else. But whenever I had the opportunity to go where he was, I didn't want to be anywhere else. I was right at the center of the universe as far as I was concerned, and I was just content to be there because I was in his company, because his physical presence kept all the mist away. And it was just, there it was. And I could be in the now. And see, that's what spiritual life really is. It's a cliche that people talk about. Richard Alpert Ram Dass wrote that book, Be Here Now, which became a seminal work for my generation of truth seekers. I never read the book because I was already established with Swami by the time it came out, but I've always loved the title. Be here now. And what has, and so the experience of having that be a spontaneous feeling for me, why would I want to be anywhere else? Now, fortunately, that's not the only time it happens. It happens sometimes spontaneously during external experiences where one just suddenly knows I'm in the presence of God, even if I'm outside weeding the garden or in the kitchen cutting mushrooms or whatever it might be. I'm in the presence of God. I'm at the center of creation because Spirit is center everywhere, circumference nowhere. Why would I want to be anywhere else? And then my vrittis will throw up some oscillation of thought that makes me think about something I'm going to do later, something I did in the past, whatever it might be, and I have trouble being here now. But when I was with Swami, physically, his vibration was that. He had supreme powers of concentration. And so whatever he was doing, and he said many times, the secret of his prodigious creativity and extraordinary productivity was, he said, he was able to concentrate completely on whatever he was doing in the moment. As he put it, when he was writing books, he said he couldn't even imagine how he could ever write music. And when he was writing music, the idea of writing a book was so foreign to him, it was like it never happened and could never happen again. But then he would enter into that reality. So the concept of concentration has always been fundamental to meditation, which is fundamental to the spiritual path. What is the issue when we meditate? Is that our concentration wanders. We have trouble being here now. And coming to the 8-hour meditation, which was what the question was about, by now I've always been healthy by the grace of God. So since the first one in 1971, I've never missed one of these meditations. I was at Ananda Village Yes, I've always been either at Ananda Village for all my times when Swami Kriyananda was still there, and he led the meditation personally, except once perhaps when he was in India. And when he was traveling in India, we didn't have a center. Or I've been here in Palo Alto when I've had responsibility for leading it. But my method is a really simple one, which is I don't go into it, and I know some people are different. I don't go into it with this tremendous ambition that I have to do this or I have to do that. That may work for some people. Some people are motivated by that kind of energy. For me, it just makes me tense. What I like to do is I like to be here now. And if there's any sense of anxiety or trepidation or anything like that, it's like I can just sit quietly in the presence of God, even if I'm not aware that God is with me. God knows that I'm there. Swamiji knows that I'm there. Master knows that I'm there. I think about how much I treasured the opportunity to just be in the company of Swamiji. I mean, if we were driving to town to pick up dry cleaning when we lived at Ananda Village, what difference did it make? I was at the pulsing heart of the tunnel that was going to lead me into the presence of Master and into the presence of God. Why would I want to be anywhere else? And then when you start thinking it through, when is that not true? And that's what has been so wonderfully helpful to me. When is that not true? So here I am, just, and maybe in our world we meditate from 10 in the morning till 6 at night. The niceness of that is that we start in the daylight and end in the dark. That, there's a certain point at which you realize that, that the night is descending. And this wonderful image always, because the meditation is always just before the solstice, the winter solstice. So it's dark, 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 dark. And then it shifts. I don't like the dark. I become increasingly displeased as we get closer and closer to the solstice. But there's this wonderful pattern, which is just as I'm beginning to feel so bereft because of the darkness, I realize, it's just about to shift. And I think maybe I'm sentimental, but I can feel it when it shifts. I believe I feel it when it shifts. Or at least soon after I realize, we're moving there. And so partly what we're doing also is we're helping to make that happen. This world is a constant play of light and shadow. I've quoted, when I first quoted this, I forgot the source, and I said this, some great saint said, and I realized a great saint did say it, but it's a personal friend of mine, a long time Ananda member, who suffered 6 or 7 years of debilitated health from parasites that she picked up when we were traveling in India. And then she recovered. And she's a very active, incredibly creative, productive person. And for those years, she was curtailed. She was never stymied completely, but she was curtailed. And she didn't know if she'd ever get her strength back. But this is what she said to me. She just talked to Divine Mother and said, very few people in this world love you. And you need people in this world to love you. So if I can't do anything else, I'll be one of the people in this world who loves you. I can't tell you how deeply that idea has moved me and how profoundly helpful that thought is. So if we're sitting in an 8-hour meditation and maybe we've done our kriyas and done all the techniques we can think of, and maybe it's not as powerful as we want it to be, or maybe it is, but we can always say, Divine Mother, not many people in this world love you, but I'm going to be one of those who loves you. I'm just going to sit here and love you. However that feels to us, at the very least what it feels is, I know who I am, I know what the purpose of my life is, and I'm fulfilling it. This is where I think a very non-linear attitude to our spiritual life is important. We're not fulfilling it because of the number of kriyas we do and the number of books we've written or the this that we've done or the that we've done. All of those things are beneficial because they are dynamic expressions of our fundamental duty. And not many people in this world love Divine Mother. They love money, they love themselves, they love power, they love position, they love lots of things, but they don't love the source of it all. The world lives in a state of profound ingratitude, and our job is to right the balance. We can't drive away the shadow forever, but in the little arena where we live, we can increase the light. And just imagine, there we are. We know that Master incarnated. We know that Jesus lives. We know that Jesus is right there in our hearts. And we have the great good karma to have it have occurred to us that at this divine season, when the veil between the material world and the spiritual world is so thin, that we've been invited to sit quietly and love God. And we can love God by long lists of gratitude, by japa, by praying for people, by inwardly chanting, by staring at the pictures on our altar, by looking out the window at the green tree. Thank you, Divine Mother. Help me to be your child. Guide me and bless me that in every way I can live this life in such a way as to honor your presence within. God bless you, my friend.